So let's rig a bipedal character. As you can see, I have provided a pretty cool looking little skeleton model for us to rig on. It should be pretty easy. Don't let the complexity of the model fool you. I've broken it up into separate pieces that we will bind to our skeletons appropriately. As you can see, even though there are a lot of pieces here, I've intelligently grouped it so when we start building our skeleton, it'll be relatively easy to bind our bones to, well, our bones. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do in this chapter is we're going to make the skeleton of our model, or skeleton of our rig, rather, and we're going to bind our bones to our bones. Alright, a little bit more attention is going to be paid to the orientation of our joints and their placement. This is a more complex character, so we're going to have to spend just a little bit more time honing in on how our joints are working. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lock down my skeleton layer so I can accidentally select it. And the first thing I'm going to start off with is, you guessed it, the pelvis. Alright, so let me go into my animation menu, and I'm going to grab my joint tool. And I'm just going to place my pelvis right in the middle here, pelvis joint 001. The pelvis is going to be our basic root joint. Alright, so I'm going to place this right there, and we're off to a running start. Alright, let's grab our joint tool again, and let's build out our legs. Okay, so I'm going to place a joint right at the ball of my hip, and I'm going to come down to my knee, place it right at my kneecap, and come down and place it right at my ankle right there. And I'm going to hit enter. Now I'm going to take a second to make sure that my joints are rotated in the right direction. What we want to do is we want to have our Y or green rotation axis pretty much lined up with our leg here. So it looks like our hip is going up and down the way it should. But you'll notice that our green little rotation right here is kind of skewed, so we're just going to come in here and rotate it the right way, keep it in line with the running of our leg. See how the leg kind of goes down at an angle right here? We kind of want to match that with our skeleton there. And we want to make sure it's kind of rotated like this. Our knees kind of pointed in this direction here. It's not straight back and forth. So we want to kind of line up our green rotation axis. Not too much. That's a little too much maybe. There we go. Kind of just get the direction of our toes and match it with the direction of our toes there. Alright, great. Keep looking at it, and that'll be good enough. And let's see, where's the ball? Where's my ankle joint? Let me go to my outliner so I can find where my ankle joint is. Oh, it seems I never made my ankle joint. No big deal. You can always go in, forget to make a skeleton, grab your joint tool again, and I want to go back into my front view and place my ankle right where it should be. And let's go ahead and rotate it up and down. And to connect my ankle to my knee, I'm just going to go to my outliner right here, and I'm just going to middle mouse button click and drag and nest it appropriately. So I got my whole leg built. So I'm going to call this hip left JT001, knee left JT001, and ankle left JT001. Alright, great. We're going to do a few extra steps here. Well, maybe I should position my joints a little bit better. I'm going to get that natural curve to my joint right here. I'll hide our skeleton. I'm going to get that natural bend in my knee right here so my IK handle works really well when we make it. So maybe I'll exaggerate that a little bit. Come past my knee just a little bit. Maybe even pull my hip back just a little bit. Get that really nice bend in the leg. This will make sure when we set up our IK handle for our legs, it'll bend and rotate just the way we want it to. Alright, so let's go in now and let's create some more joints for our foot here. So I'm going to go to my skeleton tool, joint, and I'm going to put one at the ball of my foot and one at the toe of my foot. So what we have to do now is we have to come in and position it like so. Basically, you guessed it, keep lining up our joints in relation to our model. As you can see, I need to come in and just make sure my orientations are spot on. Okay. So we see that the blue is running this way and our red's running in the front. Same thing for that. We want to do the same thing for our foot joint right here. Alright. So there we go. Now we just need to reposition our toe, I guess. So you saw I did that. I just had to rotate it until I wrangled it the way I wanted it. Even though I'm moving my toe around, I can quickly just place that wherever I need to. And we'll do the same thing here. I'm taking a lot of extra care to make sure my joints are rotated in the right way, because it will matter how they're rotated, because it basically plays directly into how our skeleton will move. So let's call this ball left, JT 001, and toe left, JT 001. And we're just going to parent it to our ankle there. You want to make sure that there we go. Just making some final tweaks to it. Kind of want to make sure my foot's not bent or crooked. I want to have a nice straight line for my foot here. Maybe I'll even go in and keep positioning my joints just the right way. Alright. It's a tedious process, but as long as you make sure that your green rotation is running down the direction of your skeleton, I think you'll be fine. Alright. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to double check to make sure my green axis is running the way it should. So I grab my hip. It's going up and down. Up and down. There we go. Alright, I'm reasonably happy about that. Alright. So let's go ahead and see, looks like our hip needs to be hooked up to our pelvis. Boom, bada bing, bada boom. So hip left, JT001 is looking good. So let's go ahead and mirror my skeleton across. So if I go to mirror joint, go orientation, search for left, replace it with right, mirror across the YZ, and we'll hit apply. Looks like we should have done behavior. There we go. Make sure behavior is selected, not orientation. I'll back it up and show you what happens. I did orientation and royally screwed up my skeleton. So if I just do behavior, it looks like it puts my skeleton in the right place. So there's our foot. Our foot's made for us now. All right, great. So let's go ahead and make a spinal column for us, and I'm going to make a really simple spinal column. I want to give a disclaimer that normally you wouldn't make it like this, but I'm going to try to make our rig as simple as possible just so we can get some basic controls ready for our character. You will learn a lot about rigging going through this lecture, but trust me, it's just the tip of the iceberg. This is just a survey. No, you'll be proficient, but that's about it. I can't spend all semester teaching rigging. I mean, I could spend all semester teaching rigging, but I have to teach animation too. So with that out of the way, we'll just make a simple spinal column, I guess. So we'll just go in here and we'll create my let's see, what should we do? Let's create like a abdomen bone, and we'll just go all the way straight up to my sternum. I'm going to snap them in line with the grid. And there we go. We'll just do some FK controls for these. I'll call this ab JT001, And we'll call this chest JT001. Alright, let's go make sure that they're in line somewhat. So my ab's good. I'm going to bring my chest back in line almost at the base of my neck spinal column. Alright, and we'll just create a simple IK handle so we can rotate our upper body down and rotate it left and right like we need to. So again, I'm going to rotate my green axis so it's the one going straight up and down. Maybe do the same up here. Looks like we need to bring back my blue. Alright, just lining up that green axis straight up and down my column right here. Alright, I guess it's safe to go ahead and start building. Looks like I need to go in here and fix that. And maybe come down here. There we go. You don't want to skimp on that. Alright, so let's hook up our ab to our pelvis. There we go. So now my pelvis controls both legs and my spinal column here. And let's go ahead and build my shoulder and arms. So I'm going to go ahead and make a collarbone or clavicle bone. Just place it like right there, right in the middle of that collarbone. And then I'm just going to place my shoulder bone there, elbow, and wrist / hand. Alright, great. And so far we've been lining up our green axis up and down. But with the arm, since it's not going up and down, it's kind of going at a 45-degree angle. That'll be perfect for what we want to do right there. Again, looks like we need to bring my elbow back. There we go. My elbow now can rotate the way it should. And let me bring my wrist forward. Again, you'll see we have, if I hide my skeleton, we have a nice bend at my elbow here. And that's what we're really going to want, because we're going to set up a IK arm for this rig. We're not going to rely on forward kinematics for the arms. An IK arm gives you a nice range of motion, and hopefully by the end of it we'll have just one control for our whole arm and fingers. Alright, so what we need to do now is we need to go in and name this stuff. Let's call this collar, I'll call it clavicle. Clavicle left, JT001. Shoulder left, JT001. Elbow left, JT001. The joys of watching me name something, huh? And let's call this wrist left, JT001. Alright, great. And let's just hook up my clavicle to my chest bone. Where is my chest bone? Looks like I'm going to have to go digging through it. There's my chest bone right underneath ab. And I'm just going to nest my clavicle underneath my chest. And that completes that chain. Alright. I'll go ahead and just expand my whole rig here. Why not? You can see everything laid out for us and named right. So if I bring back my skeleton, we'll notice that I kind of maimed him. I gave him 2 fingers instead of 5 or 4. That'll just, save time and tedium when we're setting up our finger controls. Less time to work to do something, but you'll get the same basic idea. So what we need to do now is we need to set up our finger bones, okay? And you guessed it, skeleton joint tool. And what's the best way to set these up? Well, let's look at it from the side view first. And let's just look at the anatomy of my hand right now. Alright, so if I go in and select my hand, you'll notice that these actually look like finger bones, but the way your hand's built up is you just have these loose collection of bones right here, and then running through your palm you actually have a bone that looks like it's an extended finger. But rest assured, at the end of this bone right here is where your knuckles begin. So this is actually our first point of articulation for our hands. This is just some basic skeleton anatomy for an anatomically correct human. But I just went ahead and grouped all this together as just the palm or hand mesh. And I still got the fingers separated the way they need to be. Alright, so what we'll do, we'll just go into my side view here, and we'll just set our joints loosely in the same position. You know, boom, 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 and let's make a fingertip. Alright, now we can go in to a perspective view or side view and start lining up our skeletons. And if you'll notice, I actually want to orient my fingers the same way here. So that just means we'll have to go in and kind of rearrange the structure here. There we go. So green's going down, red's going left to right from this perspective. Looks like we got that going down here. The main thing is when we rotate our green, it's actually curling our fingers in. See, as I move my green handle, rotate Y, my fingers are curling in. We want to make sure our rotate Y is our basic direction in which we're moving our joints throughout the whole skeleton, really. Alright. And I kind of want to make sure that X is right in between the joints here. And for the tip of the finger, I'm not going to worry about its orientation too much. But I'm going to make sure it's in position in the right direction. Alright. There we go. I can actually just snap that bone right into one of the verts of that finger. Alright. So rotating in the Y direction, rotating in the Y direction, rotation in the Y direction. Perfect. So what we can do now is we can just duplicate this bone. We'll just drag it right there to the next finger, and we'll just rotate that whole joint chain, and hopefully it'll basically be lying in the same locations. I can live with that. And let's just do it one more time. And you'll notice for the thumb, let me zoom in on this, we actually have one more bone than we need. So I'm just going to delete this last one here. You know, some say that, you know, our thumb kind of starts articulating from right here. So you know what, why don't we just go ahead and, instead of deleting that bone, why don't we just go ahead and set up our thumb to rotate. You know, more than any other bone on your hand, your thumb really does start articulating from that little bone closest to your hand right there. So we might as well just go ahead and mimic that then. We can still come in and kind of loosely place our skeleton like so. See how I'm getting it right in there? Maybe bring it down a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to come in and kind of tweak it a little bit. I want the bones basically to end right at the ends there. And I want my bone, you know, if this bone is moving this finger, I want that bone right at the end right there. And we'll bring my fingertip down a little bit. So there we go. See how that just kind of makes sense? Maybe I should bring it in here. Actually, bring it in there just to get, you know, you can kind of see in your mind the direction in which your thumb would bend just by looking at the model here. Yeah, I think that's about right. And we'll bring that there. And all of a sudden, let me lock my skeleton down. See how I'm just selecting it on accident? Not good. Now we can see that my thumb's coming down there. There it is right there. There it is right there. So it looks like all my fingers are set up in the right direction. Alright, perfect. Good thing we're going to be mirroring the joint, because this would be a nightmare to keep doing. Alright, so let's call this joint chain the pinky. And what I'm going to do to speed this all along, well, I'll call this pinky joint, pinky left joint 001. So this is pinky A, left joint 001. And I'm just going to double click this and copy it. That way I can just paste it down and just name each one really quickly just by copying and pasting. So A, B, C, and D for our pinky. Alright. And we'll call this joint chain my index. Index A, left JT001. I'll copy that name. So I can just keep on pasting them down. Pasting them down. And paste this last one for the tip of my finger. And you guessed it, we're going to do the same thing for thumb. It's important to make sure you spell left correctly every time, because if you don't spell left correctly, then the mirror skeleton tool rather, it won't actually pick up that left being a word. So you'll kind of have like thumb A right, thumb B right, and then thumb B LFT. So it won't actually pick up the word left. So make sure you're spelling things right as you're naming this. Don't go too quick down it, even though it is tedious. Alright, so let's just collapse these. And I'm going to expand my clavicle left, shoulder left, elbow left, wrist left. And we're just going to nest pinky left, index left, and thumb all to the wrist. So what we get is something kind of like this. So it looks like everything is set up pretty good. Alright. There we go. Looks like my elbow got messed up a little bit along the way. And my wrist definitely got messed up when I nested things. But you know what? The wrist is a radial 360-degree kind of joint, so we can kind of fudge on that. You know, it doesn't just rotate in one direction. It goes all over the place, right? So we won't worry about the orientation of that joint too much, because I don't feel like going back and fixing the position of everything. Let's just make sure our fingers are still pointing in the right way. Okay, that looks like it's good. Alright, okay, my finger survived. And it looks like my shoulder's still good. Alright, great. So what we have now is my whole arm built out, starting from my clavicle all the way down. Maybe I need to bring back, just position things a little bit. Looked like my shoulder joint was out of place a little bit. I'll bring my clavicle forward and my shoulder back. Alright, so what we need to see is a clavicle kind of forward, our shoulder joint back, an elbow joint push back even further, and then my wrist pulled back so we get this natural bend in the elbow. That'll set up our IK handle pretty good. And then our fingers all oriented in the right way. And you know what? I'm going to hide things I don't need to really be looking at. Alright, so hip right, hip left. There's my ab, chest, clavicle. And we want to mirror from my clavicle joint. Do not mirror from your chest, because it's tempting. But we want to just mirror from the first joint that kind of diverges off in one direction from the central joint chain. So we'll go to skeleton, and we'll mirror joint. YZ, behavior, replace left with right. We'll hit apply. And boom. Now we're giving our skeleton a really nice skeleton. We're on our way here. Alright, so let's just create a few more bones for my head, and we'll make some bones for our eyes, believe it or not. I think it'd be cool to kind of rig our eyes. I modeled in these freaky little skeleton eyes right here. We can have our skeleton looking left and right, kind of give him some, ability to act a little bit by the way he's looking. Alright, so we're going to go in here now. Let's go to our front view, actually. And we're almost done. Joint, we'll put one at the base of the neck, one in between the eyes, and we'll hit enter. Let's just make sure they're snapped to the center of the grid. And we'll call this neck JT001. We'll call this head JT001. And then what I want to do now is make sure that my neck is in the right position. So we want to put it maybe right there at the base of my neck, because this is what's going to control, I guess, well, where do we want to bend from? So actually, let's bend our head from the base of my neck. Since this is a skeleton, we're going to rig it to where, the head will just kind of rotate on this little neck column right here. Alright. And I want to make sure I'm got a good orientation. Maybe I should look at it from head on. There we go. Kind of just wrestle it into place. You know what? I want to build 2 more joints for my eyes. So I go to the joint tool. I'll put one right there. Hit enter. I'll call this eye right JT001. And I'll go to the front view now. And I'll move this joint right in the center of my eye. Okay. It's really important that you get it right in the center there, because whenever we rotate this joint, it's actually going to rotate the eyes. So we want to make sure it's as close to the center as possible. I can do this by really zooming in here, and I'm actually going to snap it to the center of this little sphere here. Then I'm just going to move it forward a little bit. Alright. You can even go in and double check where the eyes rotate handles are. And you see that the joint's not quite in place. Maybe it needs to be up a little bit more and forward. And that's basically where the center of our eye is at. Alright. What we'll do now is I'll hook my eye right to my head. And I'll actually just mirror this joint across too. But remember, I did something funky. I started with the right instead of the left. So I actually need to search for right now and replace it with left. So that way I get eye left JT001 and eye right. So I had to kind of switch up my search for and replace with there. Alright, I think our skeleton is built. Actually, we need to hook up my neck. I call it heck. That's a heck of a neck, I guess. Like I said, don't misspell stuff, because you'll have to make cheesy jokes when you do a lecture. So let's hook it up to my chest. So chest. So now when I select my chest, my neck goes straight to my chest, and will actually be rotating my head from this joint right there. Alright, great. So it looks like our whole skeleton's built. I'm actually going to stop it right now. In the next chapter, we'll just go through and start binding our individual joints to our actual model. I find that maybe binding, since this is a rigid body binding we're going to do, there's not going to be any soft deformations like the flour sac. So if we move one joint, the whole leg bone is going to follow our leg there. So if we move one joint, the whole thing will move. We're not going to have these verts deforming it at all. So if we bind our joints to our skeleton mesh bones, we'll actually be able to see our character move before our eyes as we test out our eye key handles and our finger controls and how our eyes are rotating and all that nonsense. And it'll kind of give us a better visualization of what's going on our first time through rigging this bipedal character. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. In the next chapter, we'll go ahead and bind those bones to those joints. All right.